Hey Wargamers, I think we can all agree that Tetras are finally amazing, but are they really that amazing, right? Have we hyped them up beyond what they really are capable of? And so today we're going to talk about that, evaluating the strengths and potential opportunity costs associated with Tetras and looking at if they really are just that great. Let me explain. So Tetras historically have gone through, good times and bad times, but mostly bad times. They have a long history of mediocrity. They have a fragile frame. They offered some mobility, but really didn't have very many things that made them distinct from other sorts of marker-lights like Pathfinders. They largely had redundant mechanics or things that were just slight variations on the general theme and didn't necessarily do anything that special. 10th edition changes all that, right? 10th edition makes Tetras great. They are relatively durable, just like, most vehicles. They saw a bump in toughness, they saw a bump in wounds, and so Tetras have a pretty sturdy frame for what they are, at least relative to what they had been. And that is notable because they're going to be kind of in places where that's going to be an important component, and your opponent is going to target them, prioritize them. And so having that durability is necessary given their role in the army currently. They're also fast, and they are infiltrators, two elements that are not unique to 10th edition for Tetras, but certainly enhance these other benefits even further. And the real, selling point here is that Tetras have a unique ability to give full hit rerolls. This is something that isn't found anywhere else in the Codex. It is distinct for Tetras. It is unique to Tetras. And this is the thing that people want Tetras for, is for giving full hit rerolls, which is, clearly a very powerful ability. However, that comes at a cost, right? You are paying 80 points for a single unit of Tetras, to give 1 unit rerolls, right? They cannot help multiple units, so you're paying 80 points just to give 1 unit rerolls. Maybe you would be better served, spending that just to get more of that original unit. Maybe you'd be better served spending those 80 points for, a different observer or something else, right? Because while these Tetras give a fantastic benefit, they are relatively narrow in their scope, right? They have a particular role, that is to be these hit reroll observers. They can also function dynamically for board control and objective capture and things like that, but they have no offensive capability. They have no other kind of gimmick about them. And so they really are fairly narrow in their utility, although that utility is remarkably good. And so you are giving up, 80 points plus the opportunity to invest more in offensive units or to take alternative observer units like stealth suits, for example, that allow you to reroll ones to wound, which is not something that Tetras do. So there is a clear benefit, but are those benefits justified by the opportunity cost of investing in Tetras? So let's take a look at that by the numbers. All right, so these are our baseline conditions where a unit is being guided by an observer that has no interactive ability. So let's say Pathfinders, for example. They have the ability to observe for multiple units, but other than that, there's nothing special about their observing abilities, right? And so this is our baseline condition. We're really just concerned about the combined probability of successfully hitting and successfully wounding, because that is where our rerolls to hit, our rerolls to wound manifest. Everything else in terms of, saving throws and damage dealt is all going to be dependent on the weapon, but scale according to these things. It's not like being guided by by a stealth suit increases the AP of your weapon or something like that, right? So really, we're just concerned about the trade-off of to hit and to wound here. And so this is our baseline condition, where if you have a to hit of 2-up and a to wound of 2-up, you have a 70% or a 69% chance of success. Whereas if you're wounding and hitting on a 6-up, you only have a 3% chance, right? So these are our baseline conditions, and I've color-coded them just for fun, really. But it helps you understand kind of the gradient that we're dealing with, right? So let's take a look at what happens when we deal with a tetra. How does that affect these combined probabilities? So if a tetra is our observer, meaning we are being guided by a tetra, we can re-roll our hits. Now, that does open the possibility for fishing for sustained hits under Cao Yun and looking for critical hits. We're not going to deal with that. We are just looking at the straightforward application of the rule, saying that if you miss, you can re-roll and hope that you actually hit. So we're re-rolling misses under this paradigm here, and we can see that there's some pretty substantial increases in the likelihood of success regardless of our hit or wound chances. So if we're going from the best case scenario, right, where you have 2s to hit and 2s to wound, we're up at 81% chance of success. When we're down in the dumps with 6% or a 6 up to hit and a 6 up to wound, we have about 5% chance of success. So pretty sizable increases across the board relative to our original starting point. Now let's compare that to an alternative. Let's say instead of being guided by a Tetra, we're being guided by a stealth team. So we can now reroll 1s to wound. If we are hitting on 2s, again, we have an 81% chance of success. If we are hitting on 6s and wounding on 6s, we are back down to about 3% chance of success. So certainly not as good as the Tetra taking the stealth team alone. However, there is an alternative interaction here that is worth considering. And that is if we have the stealth team be our observer, but we also are within range of Shadow Sun's Hero of the Empire aura ability, which combined allow us to reroll 1s to hit and reroll 1s to wound. So we're affecting both our ability to hit and to wound here. And in this scenario, we see some pretty big shifts, particularly in the places where we have a higher chance to hit. So if we're hitting on 2s and wounding on 2s, now we have a 95% chance of success just based on these two overlapping buffs. However, if we're down at a 6 up to hit and a 6 up to wound, now we only have a 4% chance of success. And again, success just means that we've gotten to the point where we've successfully wounded. It's not doing anything with AP or damage mitigation or anything like that. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about success here. So 95% chance on a 2 up and a 2 up, down to a 4% chance of success on a 6 up, 6 up, if you are benefiting from both Stealth Team as your observer and Shadow Sun's Hero of the Empire aura ability. Right, and so those grids, those tables, show us the absolute chances of success, but they don't really tell us how much better or worse any of those options are relative to the baseline directly, right? And so if we're taking the chance of success under a modified condition relative to our baseline condition, that gives us a relative benefit of having each observer type. And so we see that Tetras relative to hitting on 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, or 6s have an increasing benefit, that you get the most benefit of Tetras when you're hitting on 6s, which makes sense. You're almost doubling your chances of successfully hitting when you're able to re-roll the majority of your hit dice. But you get a much smaller benefit of being able to re-roll when you're hitting on 2s, right? You're only re-rolling those 1s, and that's not that effective. However, when we look at stealth suits and the stealth and Shadow Sun combo, we see that their benefits are relatively static across the to hit spectrum, that stealth suits give us a 17% boost in success, and the combo gives us a 36% boost in success across our hit gradient. And the reason for this is because we're really just dealing with those 1s, right? That those 1s to hit, those 1s to wound, those are always going to be misses, and so we always have access to the same number of dice that we're re-rolling, and so we end up with a 17% boost and a 36% boost with those two respectively. However, this does highlight, and quite literally, right, I have this table highlighted based on, or shaded based on relative strength, where the red coloring are worse than the white coloring. We see that there is, a clear advantage to Tetras for anything that's hitting on 4s, 5s, or 6s. That is by far the best choice. However, if you're hitting on 2s, the Shadow Sun Stealth Suit combo is more than double the benefit. And if you're hitting on 3s, you do have a slight benefit from the Shadow Sun Stealth combo, but Tetras are virtually equivalent there. You do have, it is about a 10% difference, right? 33 to 36 is about 10% difference. So, but still, for the flexibility and the other attributes of the Tetra compared to having to have multiple units interacting in order to extract this benefit, 33% benefit versus 36 is, virtually the same in a lot of cases. So are Tetras really that great? Yeah, they are, pretty much at least, right? So, Tetras are, the best option compared to Stealth and Shadow Sun as your observer/buffer unit for anything hitting on 4s, 5s, or 6s, and then that 3 is pretty much, equivalent. So there's a lot of things that are really good about Tetras, right? That, they do allow you for some sustained hits fishing if you want to go that way. But more importantly, they require less coordination. They're more flexible, right? You just need to have one unit that can see something. You don't have to worry about your positioning relative to Shadow Sun. You don't have to worry about, keeping multiple units alive. You have a lot more flexibility with just slapping down a unit of Tetras and saying, hey, they're going to point at a thing, and this other unit is going to have, they're going to have full rerolls to hit. Plus, they do have these extra benefits of being infiltrators, right? Like, that's also true for stealth suits, right? And Shadow Sun, you can do all these things with them too, but that doesn't take away from the fact that Tetras can do that too and still have, a lot of flexibility. They are fairly durable because of their chassis now. And so, yeah, there is a lot to respect about the simplicity and the multifunctionality of the Tetra within those relatively narrowly defined roles. When we're talking about hitting on 3s, there is that slight advantage for Shadow Sun and Stealth. And that's important because most Tau units are BS4, which means that when they're guided, they're going to be hitting on 3s. So this is an extremely relevant benefit, right? That most units are actually going to be in this kind of gray zone where you're getting 33, 36% benefit from these different units. And so maybe if you're really in a place where you have your game honed extremely well and you're looking to eke out a little bit of advantage, maybe that Shadow Sun Stealth Suit combo is worth considering here. But for the vast majority of players, in the vast majority of cases, the Tetras are probably going to just be the simpler option and going to give you more flexibility in what you're doing. What about those units that are hitting on 2s though, right? The units that are hitting on 2s, that's where we saw Shadow Sun and Stealth Suits really shine. We saw that in those cases, Shadow Sun and Stealth Suits combined gave us a much bigger benefit. As far as, hitting on or getting your rerolls to hit, in those cases, the Shadow Sun Aura and the Tetras are identical, right? Because, minus fishing, because you're only missing on 1, so re-rolling 1s and re-rolling all misses is the same thing. But that does kind of open the utility for stealth suits because, if you're not gaining anything from the Shadow Sun aura relative to Tetras, the stealth benefit is all profit, right? It's all added goodness. And so that stealth wound re-roll is really influential when you're hitting on 2s. All right, so let's look at 3 different case studies of units that hit on 2s. And these each represent kind of a different archetype within the codex of how these units achieve hitting on 2s and the relative incentives that you have for using Tetras versus the Shadow Sun stealth combo. So for broadsides, right? Broadsides, heavy rail rifle, that's a heavy weapon, so they're going to be moving from 4s to 3s because of heavy, and then hitting on 2s when guided. So when they're stationary and guided, they're hitting on 2s. That means that the stealth reroll is, again, really valuable there because they don't have any difference in output based on the difference between Shadow Sun and Tetras. And so the stealth reroll is really the thing that makes the difference for them. And for a unit that has, a low volume of fire, high quality shot, having the ability to reroll a wound is huge. So having this stealth reroll on your unit of broadsides is really, really valuable. And so this is kind of the first category of places where, yeah, you really do want to think about having your broadsides be clustered around Shadow Sun, and then have or at least have access to Shadow Sun, and then have, you know, a unit or two, or at least have like a buddy system of stealth suits to broadsides, so that you can use those stealth suits to get your reroll 1s to wound. It's going to make a big difference for how those broadsides function. The next group of units are things like Breachers, where we're hitting on 2s when they're guided, right? They have a native 3-up ballistic skill, so that bumps down to a 2 when they're guided. However, Breachers don't care about the stealth suit reroll, right? That is built in, right? They can reroll 1s when they're targeting a unit that's not on objective, and then they get full rerolls to wound against units that are on objectives, which is, you know, amazing. So the trade-off between Tetras and Shadow Sun plus stealth suits is completely moot. It's irrelevant for Breachers, so it's not really worth spending much time thinking about. If you can support them with Tetras, great. If you can support them with Shadow Sun, great. Either of those are going to give you the same output, and so it doesn't really matter, right, how you do that. Commanders, on the other hand, commanders will hit on 2s when they're guided, right? But they're generally going to be attached to crisis suit units, and so it doesn't matter that they hit on 2s, because you are going to be more focused on the needs of the crisis suit unit than the needs of the commander itself. So you're probably going to want Tetras support here, just because it is going to be more dynamic. You don't have to have Shadow Sun tag along with a crisis suit unit. You can have them run around the board, have the Tetra just like, yo, I got you from across the board. Not a problem. So generally, Tetras are going to be a good pairing for your crisis suits because of that. And yeah, right. Like, that's another situation where, yeah, you might have some benefit of Shadow Sun and stealth combos, but really the Tetra's simplicity and flexibility in terms of, you know, where it can be, where it's going to be effective on the tabletop, opens up a lot more opportunities for you in gameplay style. So those are 3 different places where you might want to consider Shadow Sun and stealth suits, but really I think just the broadside scenario where you have these units that are hitting on 2s with a high quality, low volume of fire shot, that's where you're going to get that stealth benefit. Otherwise, just use Tetras, because they really are that good. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you stuck around to this point in the video, maybe you want to join our Discord community as well. There's a link in the description below. Special thanks to all my supporters over on Patreon, but especially the folks that you see on your screen now. If you want to help make more invasive wargaming videos, consider joining our community over there as well.